To get started with our next session, the session is on traditional foods, and it's called Setting the Table, Creative Space for Food, Land, and Culture to Thrive. Fiona Devereaux has lived on Coast Salish territory for half of her life. She is a first-generation Canadian from Irish parents, and her passion for nutrition and food started at an early age. She trained in dietetics at the University of Saskatchewan and interned in the Regina Health Region from 1995 to 2000. The ocean and the coast called her back, and she started her career as a diabetes educator. In 2002, she got her dream job as the community nutritionist for Aboriginal Health with Vancouver Island Health Authority. During this time, she learned about the local culture and traditions and met many helpful and supportive people. Please join me in welcoming Fiona Devereaux.
Hi, thank you so much. It's a real honor to be here in Gathering Wisdom and also on the Ts'ewulhtun, the Burrard, and the Ts'ewulhtun, the Musqueam, and the Squamish Nations for having me join them in their territory to share the amazing work that I have had the honor of collaborating with on Vancouver Island. So I really appreciate you all being with me today, and I'll get energy from all of your smiling faces back at me. So thank you. Haichka. All right. So this is a teaching, Setting the Table, that I received from the Ts'ewulhtun Nation about 10 years ago. And this is an elder, Elmer Henry from Paquachin, in the movement that we were doing in South Vancouver Island around setting the table. And he was smiling at me greatly as we set the table with crabs, some smoked fish, and I think we had some oysters that day. So hopefully we can have fun in the next 40 minutes. So I was going to just talk a little bit about where the work has been done, talk about food, my passion. I love to eat. I have had such an amazing ride working in communities and being able to taste so many delicious foods. I'm going to really talk about how to create a food movement and how to make the healthy choice the easy choice for communities and community members, and how to build healthy communities and some successful approaches. I see in the audience some key people that I've worked with over the last couple years, Matilda from the New Chalmouth area, Janine Gagné, Melody Charlie, who are all powerhouse people who do this work in their communities. So I'm going to be sharing some of their work with me as well today. So anyone here from Vancouver Island? Yay! Welcome. So good to have some friends here. So you can see the small box at the bottom of this slide. That is where I spend a bit of my time. That is where I work out of Victoria, and I provide service to the 9 nations in the community and the large urban population. But I have had the honor of traveling up and down the island. I've been to Kingcombe, Alert Bay, and I've been all up and down New Chalmouth territories as well, and into the central of the island. So I live in a really beautiful place and have had the honor of learning from the New Chalmouth people, the Coast Salish and the Kwakwaka'wakw. So as I'm speaking to many people that know how powerful and vast the feasting and food was historically, full of bounty. There's a lady there, and she's drying huckleberries, and you can just see the vast amount of huckleberries that she has been able to harvest and dry. There's some fish being smoked here at the 4th Annual Traditional Foods Conference. We were learning skills at that event. And then also the open water sea fishing of the Coast Salish people. This is down in the States, the lower picture. So we all know the vastness of the elders' knowledge, the healthness of the lifestyle of the past, and how the feasting table was bountiful and collaborative and very community focused. On the last table there are some digging sticks made from ironwood, which is ocean spray, which is a common wood that we use in the Saanich territory. Very, very hard wood and great tool. So I, of course, know I'm talking to people from all over British Columbia, and I know that I would have a lot to learn of different foods that you eat in your territories, but these are some of the foods that I have had the honor of learning how to gather, fish, hunt, and then also eat and prepare. So there's the foods from the sea and the foods from the land. One of the key teachings that I have learned over the years is how much knowledge exists in the community. As you build relationships and people feel more comfortable with you, they share their vast teachings. One of the great projects I've been able to work on are digital stories, and I wish I could share some more digital stories with you today. The one on the link here below is from Tachis up in Fort Rupert at the tip of the island, and it's an amazing story from youth that are talking about their land and the elder that shares many teachings about food. I don't think we have time to share it. Some of the stories are around 5 minutes long, but I have them here, and I have my email. If you want to ever connect at the end, please email me and I can send you these powerful stories. Basil Ambers is the elder that's in this teaching, and he talks about how First Nations communities don't think of the land as their own. They hold it in trust for their future generation. So it's really that difference in thinking from the world I grew up in around ownership compared to ensuring a healthy environment for all generations. So what is on today's table? I've been using this quote since I heard it about 10 years ago. If you lose your food, you lose part of your culture, and it has a devastating effect on your psyche. I had the honor for many years to travel into many homes in South Vancouver Island through a diabetes outreach program that we created. And I, keen little nutritionist, wanted to always talk about healthy eating or nutrition or activity and cooking. And many times community members talked about depression or trauma or struggling with relationships in the family. Not many times were they needing to talk about nutrition or activity. It was the other things that were affecting their lives. And through colonization and all the devastating tactics of the government, I saw the changes that not having access to land or their food created for community members. So there's the First Nations food and nutrition environmental study that happened a couple years ago. And I like to talk about it because I think it talks about some of the key things that we're seeing in community. What we know is that many traditional foods are eaten. The top ones are salmon, moose, elk, deer, and trout. The top 5 modern foods or market foods are soup, veggies, potatoes, fruit, or grains. The big concern is out of the 1,100 adults that were surveyed, many of the nations were not urban, they were more rural. But they had very huge concerns that their food would run out before the month. 36% said the food that they bought didn't last and there wasn't enough money to buy more. 12% cut their meal sizes or skipped meals. And 7% were hungry but did not eat because they couldn't afford. And we know that many moms and fathers skip meals to make sure their kids eat. So food security, not having enough access to food, culturally appropriate food, is a huge concern for First Nations communities on the island. The key in the last line is that 91% of them would love to eat more of their traditional foods. They did express some barriers. They had lack of equipment or transportation, lack of availability or access to land, lack of time, and then again the difficulty to access, and then government firearm regulations or DFO, all those kind of governmental policies. When I was one day just brainstorming the things that I've heard over the last 13 years, I do think that the impacts of colonization are very vast. Another thing is, how many of you spend so much time trying to find money? If I could just do the work without having to find money to do the work, we'd all have much more prosperous food programming. The lack of land and quality land to grow food or create orchards or revitalize the clam beds. Lack of food access or food skills. Poor access to any kind of food programming. A big, huge concern about worries of our salmon and contamination, poor transportation, hunger, and frustration. I have also put in a link here to an amazing story of a youth that we worked with, Keenan, and he summarizes the shift from colonization and the impact of food. So if you ever want that video again, I'm sorry there's no time to show it. It's a powerful story from a young 19-year-old from the Shuswap First Nation. So I always like to talk about this. Is the healthy choice the easy choice? What do you guys think? Nope. No, it isn't. So I always, at health fairs or events, I have a basket of fresh fruit or vegetables or berries and just have a sign saying the real fast food. Oh, I'm going the wrong way. So we kind of, a lot of times people think that the health crisis might be happening in certain populations, or I hear health people always say that Aboriginal people have huge diabetes rates. We're seeing a health crisis across the board. I think Art this morning, if anyone was in that presentation, talked about it really profoundly, that the generation that's 15 to 17 across the board is the first generation that might not outlive their parents. So very powerful. But why? Well, we really live in a really supersized world. In the last 20 years, things have dramatically changed. So my mom shops at Superstore for a dinner plate. About 10 years ago, she got this plate. And a normal dinner plate is 8 inches, and hers was 21 inches. And she's like, well, I don't eat more. And I'm like, Mom, you have a 20-inch plate. Of course, you're putting more food on it. So things have gotten bigger and bigger. The average cookie has gone from the size, about this size, around 55 calories, to 275 calories. You'd have to wash your car for an hour and 15 minutes to burn off that extra calories. French fries have gone from 210 calories to 610 calories. You'd have to walk for an hour and 10 minutes to burn off that difference. Bagels have gone from, you know, a mini bagel that you can buy, those little ones? That's actually the size that a bagel should be. So bagels have just ballooned, and you'd have to rake leaves for 50 minutes to burn off the calorie differences in those sizes. We all know the power of pop. Does anyone know how many packages of sugar are in a can of pop? 7, did someone say? Great, it's actually around 10. It depends on the can, but they're all around 10. Having just 1 can of pop a day increases your risk of developing diabetes by 60%. So it's a powerful indicator of food and health. So you would have to rake leaves for 35 minutes to burn off the difference in calories. And that's like, the old 70s can or bottle of pop versus a 12-ounce bottle of pop. So it's not like the supersized. Anyone know how many packages of sugar are in a Slurpee, or a large big Slurpee, or a big gulp? Someone said 25? A little bit more. A little bit more. Ooh. How about 48? So for every ounce of Slurpee or pop that's in a big gulp, there's a package of sugar. So it's kind of a nice way to look at it. So powerful. If I was to add up, when I'm sitting with someone with diabetes, and add up all the sugar they get from healthy food like fruit and vegetables and quinoa or brown rice, or all the foods that end up breaking down to sugar, the goal for them would be no more than 30 to 35 packages if they're not that active per day. So if a child is having a Slurpee or a big gulp, they're getting 48 just from that food. So that just gives you a bit of an idea of how things, 20 years ago, if you got spaghetti, you'd get a cup of pasta, which is about the size of your fist, with 3 meatballs. Now you're getting 2 cups of pastas with 6 meatballs. So things just have gotten so big. This was actually one of my favorite things that I've read in the recent time. Julia Child's The Joy of Cooking, or a Danish group, took their famous cookbook. And so from 1909 to 2009, they kind of watched the recipe sizes, and the homemade meals have increased by 77% in those cookbooks. The portion sizes for meat increased 27%. Starch products increased the serving size by 148. Vegetables increased by 37. Sauces increased by 47. So there is a positive, at least the vegetables increased. But again, our portion sizes have gotten just dramatically bigger. So the supermarket has become our shoreline. If you took like a little ticker tape and walked around to measure how much aisle space junk food or fruit and vegetables took, for every 3 meters of produce, there's 10 meters of junk food in the grocery store. Every hour that you watch TV, you're getting 7 fast food or junk food commercials. When you look at the grocery store, really the healthy choices are on the perimeter. When you have to take a food from Mother Earth and package it or put it in a can or in a bag, you usually have to add sugar, fat, and salt. So trying to encourage food that really is as close to its natural form as possible. Again, popular store-bought cookies used to yield around, if you were making them, would be around 60 cookies, and now they're yielding 100 cookies. I like this other quote. How would you feel, when you think about food and where it comes from, how would you feel after you'd flown on a plane or traveled to New Zealand? How do you feel after a long flight? I got here late last night after a long ferry trip, and I was like, phew. So it's important to think about the food, that it can be exhausted, dehydrated, dirty, and how food feels after being transported all around the world. So I don't know if anyone's heard of the author Michael Pollan. He's one of my favorite food authors who's really trying to just debunk all the confusing messages that make the healthy choice harder. And one thing he talks about is we talk about junk food, and he doesn't believe that it actually deserves food in the title, so he calls them edible food-like substances. In BC, at the nutrition survey that happened in around 2005, every time, 25% of what British Columbians put in their mouth comes from junk food. So a quarter of what we eat comes from food that doesn't have any nutrition. Hold on a sec. So the idea, I would do anything to lose 10 pounds but eat healthy or be active. So Art kind of talked a little bit about that today. So there's also this note to self: if I feel like crap, or if I eat like crap, I feel like crap. So eat less crap, which is carbonated sugary drinks, especially energy drinks, refined sugar, artificial foods, processed foods, and eat more food. So colorful food like vegetables and fruit, organic meats and fish and game. Eat more healthy fats, Art talked about that today, and drink water and fluids. And I agree with his idea that coffee's good. I drink a coffee a day. But I do like to always make sure you don't drink any more than 4 cups of caffeine a day. So another little fun way to look at it is the key to healthy eating. Avoid any foods that have a commercial on TV. Usually if it's a health food, they don't really have to sell it. But when they're trying to sell it to you, usually it doesn't have a strong nutrition background. Things like brain food versus stomach food. I use this slide a lot when I'm talking to kids. When I talk about eating Mr. Noodle or a package of Kraft Dinner, and I have these visuals where I kind of have the visual of what the Kraft Dinner is, and they lift the lid and it shows how it breaks down in their body, and it's kind of a fun way for kids to interact with their food choices. And I ask, how long do they feel full after eating Mr. Noodle? And they're like, oh, in an hour, I'm hungry again. And it's just, there's not any nutrition in that. There's definitely no protein to help the young ones. A lot of times we talk about food and forget that food's goal is to be medicine. And that we've kind of disconnected from that across society. We eat because, man, I gotta say, I love French fries. I'm Irish. The potato is a good thing. And when I eat French fries, I'm like, oh, those are so good. And it's the fat, right? And they market and change our taste buds to adore the salt, the fat. I was on BC Ferries last night, and I was sitting there, and I was trying not to eat French fries because, like, the waft from White Spot. So you sit on the ferry there, it's hard to not go, that smells good. So trying your best to remember that if you're feeling tired, you're feeling exhausted, how are you fueling your body? And how are you connecting to that reminder that the medicine and the nutrients are the medicine? So this was brought up through Art as well a little bit. This is the American Food Guide from 1917. And have companies, even dietitians, universities, complicated the message. Food, buy it with thought, cook it with care, use less wheat and meat, buy local foods, or harvest and connect to local foods that are free, serve just enough, and use what is left, and don't waste. And so just kind of remembering that we are targeted and marketed to every day to make it confusing, but when we really connect to our teachings and our families and our culture, we can remember these simple principles. This was made by the Squamish Nation down in the States, and it was just a nice visual of healthy portion size, healthy visuals of how we should put our plate down. So another teaching is don't eat anything your great-grandmother would not recognize as food. So that's moving on to the third video, I think, the Feasting for Change video. And I'll let you, give me a minute. This is a project that I've worked on I've had the honor of working on for the last 6 years. I want to just read a story. So myself and my nurse, as the Aboriginal health team, make their way to the door of one of the local elders who has diabetes. As he opens the door, he softly gestures to the team as he points past the field to the bay in front of his house. He says, "You see this? When I was growing up, this was my grocery store." They pause and listen as he passionately tells them of a time before diabetes, when diabetes prevention was woven into the fabric of everyday life. He talks about the challenges of maintaining this disease and how it continues to affect so many people in his community. So that day was very profound for me in my early learning about seafood and the contamination worries and the loss of access. You could see all the crab boats out in front of this bay, but many of the community members didn't have crab boats, and they were commercial companies taking a lot of the food away from the community members. So I decided to, with a group of people, hand deliver invites to some local elders, and we brought everyone together in Souk, and we'll share kind of the start of this movement. If you can play the story.
My name is Angel Henry, and I am proud to share with you a story that is close to my heart. It is about a group of people who have made a dream a reality by choosing to feast for change. The journey starts in South Vancouver Island in March 2007 with some of the members of the Feasting for Change working group. This is me and my 3 boys, Perry, Marcus, and Andre, at the Ts'ewulhtun feast last summer. I am from the Pakwachin First Nation, and I am proud that I learned everything I know about food from my mom, Joan Henry, whose food teachings were passed down to her from the many women in our family. I have been part of the Feasting for Change group for the past year and a half and have loved learning more about my food culture. Harvesting, preparing, cooking, serving, and eating my traditional foods has always been important to me, but with this project I have had the privilege of gaining more knowledge and skills about the old way so I can continue sharing the traditional ways with the next generation. The Souk Hall was packed with families, and you could feel the excitement that feasting together inspires. Elders and young ones alike shared their stories about the old ways and encouraged the feasting to continue. Ideas bubbled about what it would take to share the traditional ways by using knowledge and skills that already exist in the community. So we set a path of working with each community's planning committee to create feasting events that highlight the stories, passion, skills, and knowledge in each community, while also assessing what their hopes and dreams were around food. The events continued along the path of over 18 months. We had the honor of helping to host 14 events in 9 communities. Pit cooks, harvesting days, plant identification walks, a large urban feast, and so much more. At each of these events, sharing and celebrating traditional foods as a community was the focus, but over time we learned that this was not the only thing we were celebrating. At many gatherings, community members said this was the first time they had seen a pit cook or tasted food in the ground. The first time they had tried salmonberry shoots or soapberries, or the first time they had walked in the woods to harvest sahal or fern. Many commented on their first time trying certain foods they had learned about from their parents, grandparents, or great-grandparents. In one of the communities, the children taught us how to harvest, prepare, and eat rock stickers, goose-like barnacles, mussels, sea eggs, and urchins. For many of us, it was the first time we tasted these foods. The energy and spirit at these events are powerful. There is always a true sense of community and coming together. So many times we heard that it was so nice to come together, to gather together and share food when it is not a funeral. So much about skunk cabbage. They are harvested in the springtime and then are used to wrap the fish in the pit. They are so useful they can be used as a dinner plate. We were also taught that we could use skunk cabbage for a shoe. How creative the old ways was. What I have learned from my elders is that everything has a life. Be thankful for what you have and only take what you need. Always keep your heart and mind open to the teachings you are receiving. We are hoping to share this story with others so more First Nation communities can continue to receive the teachings while feasting for change.
Thanks. Sorry, time is so tight. So that is this amazing project that I had the honor of working with over the last 5 years. We traveled up to Alert Bay, into Sanawas, in Nanoose, and then all over the place multiple times in South Vancouver Island. We did around 41 events, reaching over 5,000 people. And we created some stuff. We've been having fun. The first couple years, some people were like, well, how did you organize these events? So we created a knowledge basket, which is really just a DVD that tells this story. It has this story, and then just a slideshow of people actively out on the land harvesting and learning. And then just another disc that has tools and resources to help people bring people together. I remember one time we did an event and I forgot to talk to Chief and Council. So we made a planning checklist after that because that was a bit of an oops. We have a step-by-step how to do a pit cook following the teachings from the Pacheedaht First Nations. And what we found is that once people saw that, they could remember different ways that they had cooked in the earth. And we'd adapt it each time we went into a community. There's also a list of all the traditional medicine books and food books that we've found over the last years, and you can always email me and I can send you those. Just fun ways, games. I was going to do a game with you, and then I realized this is a bit of a big group. So fun games that you can kind of learn the assets that exist in your community and how much knowledge you have around in your nation. We created plant cards. The great part of each feast is we'd go on a nature walk, and it would be led by a community member, or if there wasn't a community member in that community, we'd bring someone in. And we created this deck of cards. I have a sample of them here today. They're plant knowledge cards, and there's 68 different local plants. On the back, it gives teachings, harvesting times, uses, and different ways to do it. So we created this as a project to kind of keep the feasting happening. So we're using it as kind of a social enterprise. We use the money then to keep the feasts happening. They're $35. If you're interested, I can give you the contact information on how to get them. We just also really with the plant cards, we wanted the youth to have something that they could refer back to when they're on the walks or when they got home if they wanted to learn more. One time, 10 minutes, oh God, I'm in trouble. We had the slideshows just happening at feasts, and one of the elders said to me, please make a book. Summarize the teachings from this 5 years. So we created, again, a book that summarizes the recipes, some of the knowledge, some of the rites that we learned and were shared with us through those events. I gotta hurry. Also, Feasting for Change kind of was a lot of work, and we were kind of seeing communities take it on themselves, but what we saw is this amazing island-wide movement, and the Wathluk and other communities were starting to do the feasts, and we created a traditional foods network on the island. You can hear our story at this YouTube or connect with me for our website. It's www.indigenousfoodsvi.ca. We have had traditional foods conferences on the island. We just hosted our 6th. Was anyone able to join us at the, Georgia was there. We hosted it in Cowichan. Each year we move it around the island to kind of bring the energy from different territories and to highlight the knowledge. We've been all over the island except the tip, but we're hoping to maybe go to Fort Rupert and Guasala and Aquata next year. I did an amazing project called the Youth Digital Harvest, where we brought youth and elders together to the most beautiful place, Tofino, BC, where we learned and shared and gave the youth digital cameras, and then they were encouraged to go home and take pictures and create a story of their liking. We first year created 23 stories, and then we created more. This is the YouTube that talks about how we did it, but then there's these amazing youth stories, and Keenan's earlier and the elders earlier were both from that project. And the key is sharing through the generations. This is my favorite photo with all the people from Pockwitchin hiding behind and the young one learning and seeing a pit cook open for the first time. So how do we set the table for tomorrow? I really wanted to focus a lot of today, which is so funny, on how as health leaders, chiefs, health directors, how can we set a healthy table for tomorrow? So I really think it's important to connect to that teaching that children only grow up once. They have the first 18 months to make sure they get the best iron stores possible. Then they have 5 years to kind of really focus on that iron. But it is essential. Brain development, mental or like slow brain growth and development can happen without good iron stores. Kids only have 18 years to lay down their calcium stores. So how do we do that? So just thinking about that opportunity, like when we have young people, let's feed them well. The kids, their stomach is the size of their little fist. If they're eating, drinking sugary drinks, are they going to eat the food that is their medicine? How do we reconnect? How do we shift away? How do we create healthy environments, healthy tables? So I'm going to go through some of this. So take care of your body or your community. It's the only place that you have to live in. In every community, there's work to be done. In every nation, there is wounds to be healed. In every heart, there's the power to do so. I'm going to skip that. How do we create healthy environments? I remember one of the communities in my nations was had a brand new building. They were going to do landscaping. And I kind of tried to call everybody and say, hey, can we plant berry bushes and fruit trees and then have an edible landscape for that community so that it's not just a place where, and we could then fence it to make sure that some of the animals don't come in. Many times communities don't have access to a boat to get the food for their elders or their community meals or community events. So how do we create edible environments? Do you want to play this quick one here? So this is from my lovely friend Melody Charlie. Nature is our original PlayStation. So let's just watch this quick video.
Xbox. Circle for Target. McDonald's sign. Flowers.
I do not know what kind they're, but I know they're plants.
Some kind of weed.
Probably during the day I send about 300, 400, 500 text messages.
My main goal after school, like get my homework done so I can play games.
When I play video games, I'm like in my own little world.
A television, you know, it shouldn't mean that much to you if you miss it, or you shouldn't be upset and frustrated.
Being like connected with nature to the point where you feel tied to it in a way doesn't seem essential.
The landscape of childhood has changed.
This is a very large experiment.
We're hardwired to need nature. We don't do so well when we don't have that kind of experience.
It's fun, if not more fun than using computers, just because it's something I've never experienced before, really.
I don't really miss my phone. It's kind of fun being out here.
And like video games, you can't sleep outside.
What are you missing when you are looking at screens?
We are destroying our ability to reproduce ourselves as a healthy culture.
We have a chance to change the course of where we're headed right now.
We need to put them in a situation in which they can have a sense of wonder.
What they will not value, they will not protect. And what they will not protect, they will lose.
Mel for sharing that with us. Disconnect to reconnect, and that's what I really feel I saw happen in glimpses in Feasting for Change or the Traditional Foods Network. But we were doing lots of communities. We weren't able to target and focus on one nation. And I wish over time that I could to see the dramatic effect that we could do if we could shift how we're connected. And I know that I'm over-connected sometimes. We talked about that last night with Facebook. So we need more of us to disconnect to reconnect to the outdoors. What children do not value, they will not protect. And what they do not protect, they will lose. So I was also watching Robert Bateman, that famous painter, one day, and he said that he was quoting a Cowichan elder. What we've been saying is, what kind of world are we leaving for our children? We need to start asking, what kind of children are we leaving for our world? So, I'm going the wrong way, team. Trying, over the years, my first meal in community was 2 bottles of pop, some ground meat with some white flour, slushy kind of in together. And that community I was in on Monday, we had a beautiful table set. And I also, for the first time, saw the community drum and sing. And, you know, to see that shift and that change and that resilience is powerful. But communities are nutritionally at risk. They do not get enough fruits and vegetables due to poverty and a lot of food skills lacking, and they don't get enough protein. So as health leaders, when you have time to set that table, set it the foods that your communities need, not the ones they maybe want. I know one community love to have KFC all the time. I'm like, your communities might get that, but what do they need? It takes 20 times for a young person or an adult to see a new food before they'll eat it. So when we have the opportunity, let's do our best to set the table. So this is when we have the chance, let food be the medicine. And bring your community together around food that fills their cup. And Mel was sharing last night that she's done this legacy tournament. At the first year, everyone was laughing and being like, what's hummus? And this year, they're trying quinoa. They're very open and trying new things, and that's from her leadership. I do think creating, a lot of times I'm asked to come into community and be like, can you tell the cooks to cook better? Can you come in and help with new recipes? Can you come in and do this? And I will do anything as long as it's collaborative, fun, maybe hands-on. But I'm not going to go in and tell your cooks how to cook. They've been cooking for years. They have tons of knowledge. Let's do it together, but it has to come from maybe a policy of health. How can you create a healthy nutrition and lifestyle policy for your communities that your staff have to abide by? When I go to youth events and the youth or leaders are buying food that the youth do not need or get a ton of at home, use that opportunity and those dollars to fuel those youth and expose them to new foods. I have never had a negative experience cooking with youth. They're keen, they're excited, they'll try anything. And so using those opportunities to fuel their tongues and their taste buds to try new things. Oh, I keep going the wrong way. Here is one way that we were trying to do a food and nutrition policy. We just put a dinner plate up and started listing things that the community thought might be a good idea to serve. And we just listed. And then we did a little list because sometimes people need to know what maybe not to put on their plates and help guide them. But you can do this in any way, and really including your knowledgeable chefs and cooks on how to kind of do this. Also, just, that same idea again, community nutrition policy. One community I work in, they don't have salt shakers at any of the meals. They created this universal seasoning, and it's just a healthy salt shaker. And so it's always on the table, and people can just try it. There's no you have to do this. It's just there for you to be exposed to. And I think that that's the one thing about nutrition. I hate when it's negative. Man, don't we all love eating? Let's have fun with it and set the table with food that kind of engages people. This were some all stuff about the movement to really focus on schools, because kids are learning in schools, they're connected in schools, and how can we do our best to create healthy school environments. So again, if you want to look at this stuff, I can send it to you. Again, feasting creates opportunity for people to eat together. We know that eating together is one of the main predictors of health, so there's some more information on there. Children that eat together do better in school. They have better social and language skills. They have better weights. They're more connected. They have better self-esteem. They smoke and drink less. They're less bullied. They have less depression, and they feel more secure. Sometimes when people hear, and busy families hear eating together, they get overwhelmed. We just mean even breakfast, even a snack. If you can find the time to bring everyone to a table of some kind and turn off the technology and just connect. My good friend Matilda Atleo created these conversation cards because we know that sometimes it can be hard to start that conversation, but the power of eating together, as a nutritionist, I would say the power of nutrition is so great. What we know, who cares what you eat at this point? Just connect. So set that table with whatever you can at the moment and work to making it healthier over time, but the key is eating together, having those opportunities. So they created these amazing culture cards that you can just, conversation cards that you can have on the table, and the kids can pick one. There's some examples of the questions. Or if you could have been an inventor of anything, what would it have been? Could you name some fruits that you have to peel before you eat them? What games do you like to play outside? So just ways to kind of engage young people and connect as a family. And the key is turning off the technology and not stressing about what you're eating, just eat together. So we have, as a group of people on the island, have had some great successes. We are currently doing some traditional food and plants classes where we're doing train the trainers and getting just people to kind of reconnect the knowledge that they have. I have many visuals on healthy food and not so healthy food and how they break down to the body, and I just usually line them up on a table. They're in these dinner plate formats, and let community kind of learn about how their food affects their body. Melody, do you want to chat about some of the, quickly? Come on, my love. She is a powerhouse in New Chalmette on health promotion.
Hi, my name is Melody Charlie. I'm from the Ahousaht and Ukilit First Nation. I'm also here photographing the event today, but I work quite closely with Fiona and Matilda and a bunch of other amazing people. Something that we started on Vancouver Island on the West Coast was a 90-day no pop challenge. So we've done that for the last couple of years, and normally it's been pretty small, like 30 people or whatever. And then last Christmas, it just went off. There was like 250 people from all over who just were so interested in making this change. So now it's going to become an annual event because January 1st, December, January, people are thinking about making healthier changes and that. So starting a 90-day no pop challenge, if you can do that in your community, you know, and have the support system, I think most of you have access, you know, to nurses or nutritionists or whatever, is a great challenge. Then it's a whole group of people doing it together and supporting each other. Food skills for families, I don't know if Fiona had a chance to talk about that. Food skills for families is what we call healthy cooking class. So it's a 6-week class that's once a week for 3 hours every week, and it's normally funded through the Canadian Diabetes Association. So we have those running all throughout our communities. So again, that's food skills for families through the Canadian Diabetes Association. It's a free healthy cooking class that is available for communities. But I think that if you were to do one thing, I think it's a great challenge to do the 90-day no pop challenge. Everyone can do that, and it all starts with ourselves as leaders. Thank you.
Thanks, Mel. She's also starting log into life, or she can't decide whether to call it tech off, which I think is quite great. So those are just some examples. So I always think it's important, no matter how slow you go, you're still lapping the people on the couch. So it's always about just starting where you can and in your community to make the change that might be needed. I did, on my slide, put a whole bunch of resources if you're wanting to connect to traditional food projects, and then also some healthy food links. And then I just wanted to say thank you for your time. So haichka, klako, and gegla kesla for your time. And I really hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And sorry I rushed and went over. And Matilda has conversation cards for everybody.
Okay, we're about to start the last of our breakout sessions. We have with us Dr. Danièle Behn Smith, and Danièle is Haudenosaunee from Fort Nelson First Nation on her father's side, and French-Canadian Métis from the Red River Valley on her mother's side. She's a family physician. She and her family are thankful to be living on beautiful unceded Coast Salish territory in the Cowichan Valley. And today she's going to be talking to us about integrated primary care with Ts'ewulhtun Health Center. Please welcome Danièle.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for coming out to our session this morning. I'd like to acknowledge the unceded Coast Salish territory that we're gathered on today. I feel very honored and privileged to be here with you and spend some time together talking about primary care. As Erin mentioned, I'm from Fort Nelson First Nation originally. On my dad's side, I'm Haudenosaunee, and my mom's side, I'm from Manitoba. And I'm a rural family physician by training, but I've been involved with medical education for the last, since 2008. And in 2011, I got the opportunity to join UBC as the site director for the Aboriginal Family Practice Residency site. So that's how I ended up back on the West Coast. And I've had the honor and privilege of working with Cowichan tribes at Ts'ewulhtun Health Center as a family doctor since last November. So before I begin, I'll just let everybody know that the presentation actually isn't very, very long. It's probably about 25 minutes maybe, and we intentionally wanted to leave quite a bit of time for discussion. We are not experts in Indigenous primary care at Ts'ewulhtun Health Center. We're learning together, and really what we wanted to do this morning was share our experiences thus far of trying to create a culturally safe Indigenous-led primary care model over the last 12 months, and then we'd really love to have time to hear from you about your experience and what you found has worked in your communities or hasn't worked, and really benefit from some dialogue and informing one another's moving ahead. So again, common goals at our center and with our partners is to collaborate to support best care for Aboriginal peoples in the Cowichan Valley. And we're really interested in pioneering an innovative, sustainable, culturally safe, holistic primary care model that can be shared with other communities. So in terms of this presentation, what we'll do is describe what we're currently offering in terms of physician services at TWT, also known as Ts'ewulhtun. We will describe our proposed interim services, and finally, describe our vision for a holistic wellness center with integrated primary care services. So currently at Ts'ewulhtun, we have 6 family physician sessionals per week, so that's the equivalent of 3 days per week, and they're split between myself and another local family physician, Dr. Graham Blackburn. And so I'm actually at Ts'ewulhtun 2.5 days a week, and Dr. Blackburn is there half a day a week. And our primary role thus far in the last year has been to support nursing and other team members. And we've also played an administrative role in developing primary care vision and community programs. So that's how I come to be here with you today, is through that role of having discussions with the community and the health center leadership and our health partners around what could innovative primary care reform look like in a First Nations health center. So as a result of the limitations, so the fact that we are only available as physicians 3 days a week, and we've got limited administrative support, we have not established a conventional family practice yet, and that decision has been a difficult decision because, of course, when the community hears that there are doctors at the health center, people make a lot of assumptions about what type of service is available. But we have really kept as our guiding principle that we want to provide safe and effective care and treatment for people. And when we say safe, we mean that to be medically safe and culturally safe. And so with the current limitations, we're just not able to provide that full scope service. And so we have not established a conventional family practice yet. The types of clients that we see include clients with chronic pain, and we share that care with their local family physicians. So we would see the clients primarily for their pain issues, and their family physicians would work with them on all their other primary care issues. We see clients for IUD insertions, fertility control, and any time-sensitive referrals if a client can't get in to see their local family physician. We see lots of families who come in for immunizations and may have other concerns, so have a cough or a rash or pink eye is what I saw yesterday. And so that's been a really nice added service, certainly for the families and the nurses as well, to be able to offer clients come and see us for something that's quick. We also see complex clients who are dissatisfied with their current family physician, who may have actually gone through several family physicians in the community and no longer have anybody designated as their primary care physician. And I've included in parentheses that people are dissatisfied with the system, although I don't have any clients that come in and say, oh, I hate the system. What I usually hear is that clients come in and say, oh, I refuse to see that doctor again, or that doctor's no good, or, you know, they just are really dissatisfied with that individual. But as I sit and listen to their stories and they describe in greater detail what it is about that individual that they don't like, it's because they're rushed and they don't have time and they don't listen and they don't care. And I know from working on the other side of that equation as a family physician that those are really systemic issues, and that over time, when you're practicing as a family doctor in a fee-for-service environment where the government is paying you to see as many people as you possibly can in a day, you know, it becomes very difficult and it's easy to burn out. And so I really think that the dissatisfaction that clients are talking about is more with the system than it is with those individual doctors. We also see unattached clients who need care, so clients who don't have family physicians. We have lots of clients that might be moving in between communities, so they might have a family physician in their home community, but they're visiting on couch and territory, so they need to see somebody, so we'll see them as well. And then we see elders with mobility issues for home visits. And finally, we also see staff and couch and tribe members who are simply having difficulty accessing their own family physicians. The typical wait, I would say, just from hearing clients come in to see us, a typical wait to see a local family physician in the Duncan area would be anywhere between kind of 1 to 3 weeks. And so oftentimes clients just feel they can't wait that long. So our current challenges include limited continuity and fragmented care. As I mentioned, we're only there 3 days a week, and so people have issues and have problems that come up on the other days when we're not there, and that leads to fragmented care. The fact that we can't provide a full-fledged service means that a lot of people have other family doctors in town, and so there's a little bit of fragmentation there because they might see us and get one opinion, but they're still under the care of their regular family physician. So we try to keep the lines of communication open. It has, in some occasions, however, led to disrupted and strained relationships with local physicians for not really having a total understanding of what it is that we might be doing at the center, and feeling that we might be just disrupting their care and their relationship with their patient. We have limited administrative support right now, so that does lead to underused healthcare professional skills. So we're responsible for doing our own faxing and booking appointments and things like that. So we do spend quite a bit of our time doing administrative tasks. And unfortunately, we've had lack of stability of funding, and so that's really limited our ability to envision what the future might hold, because we're still kind of in this holding pattern, wondering whether or not the sessions that we're billing are going to come through, if we're going to have that support, and what the support might look like in the future. Finally, Ts'ewulhtun Health Center is incredible and has so many programs and services and wonderful staff, and has really, as I understand it, grown by leaps and bounds over the last number of years under the leadership of Judith Gaughan and Jennifer Jones. And so that's led to actually a really great problem of having space restrictions. So there's so many clients that want services and come for services that they've hired on lots of new staff to meet that need, but it's commonplace place to have 2 or 3 staff members sharing an office space. And so that, of course, has limited our ability to grow as well. But again, thank you to the great leadership at the health center. There are solutions underway, and there's going to be some extra office space going to be made available in the next few months, and so that will alleviate some of that. So gold standard primary care has been defined in a lot of different ways. And one way is that it's been demonstrated that when patients see their own providers, satisfaction rises, costs go down, revenues rise, and clinical care and outcomes improve. So really from a primary care standpoint, continuity is king. As a client, if you're able to see the same provider or team of providers over time, you're going to be empowered to make change. And it's just really has been shown time and again in numerous different jurisdictions around the world that this is good primary care. In terms of gold standard culturally safe care, I think looking to the work of the South Central Foundation and the NUCA model is probably as good a place as any. And they've defined good care as having the core product being about human beings and relationships. Messy, human, longitudinal, personal, trusting, informing, respecting, and accountable relationships, partnering to make a difference over time. And the way to narrow health disparities is to put services into culture rather than culture into services. So it's really exciting to be at an event such as Gathering Wisdom, where I think this province and our communities are really coming together and are putting this into action on a much larger scale even than what has been experienced up in Alaska. So those are sort of our guiding principles and what have guided a lot of our discussions in the Cowichan territory about what could we do and what kind of service could we offer. So what we've proposed as an interim model of primary care would be to develop a dedicated practice panel of 800 to 1,200 clients, and that would really facilitate that continuity piece. So these would be 800 to 1,200 clients that would identify the primary care physicians at Ts'ewulhtun as being their family physicians. And in order to make that happen, we would need a minimum of a 1 full-time equivalent of physician time. So we really do need to have somebody available Monday to Friday, at least during those business hours, so that when issues arise, there's somebody there to address them. We would need certainly some medical office assistant time. You need exam rooms and administrative space and supplies. We've sort of erred on the side of being less aggressive in terms of clinical exam rooms, but one of the areas that Ts'ewulhtun has really been a leader is in terms of healthcare professional education, and so it would be a wonderful opportunity to have learners come. And so whenever you have learners, whether it be nursing students or physio students or medical students, you always need a little bit of extra space. So that hasn't really been taken into account in the interim plan. The other component that we included as well is some physician community wellness and administrative time. So one of the things that we've found so valuable over the last 12 months is having time to participate in the mental health team weekly meetings and the weekly Healthy Families team meetings, and being able to really work in collaboration with the nurses and the mental health counselors. So that's something that would need to be supported as well. So this is our grander vision and what we would really look to try and develop over the course of the next few years, and that would be holistic primary care teamlets. And so what this service would look like, and I'll describe the teamlet in just a moment, but the service would be relationship and community-based, collaborative, culturally safe, accessible, and innovative, and would provide exemplary care, which is, I think, what we're all looking for. What would the outcomes be? How would we measure that? So not conflating change with success. So we know that change comes with a lot of unintended consequences. So ways that we would know that we were on the right track would be that clients would be satisfied with the service, There would be enhanced health and wellness throughout the community, and the community would, we were just listening to Richard Jock talk about that in the other room, that the community would really be providing guidance in terms of developing those markers and what it means for a Hulk-Aminan person to be healthy and well, and how would we know that, how would we observe that. Decreased use of ER and walk-ins, the acute care system, which tends to be kind of somebody's last resort, the kind of, their last resort option when they can't access their own primary care physician. So ideally with primary care teamlets, clients would be able to access their primary care teamlet and wouldn't need to use the ER and the walk-ins. Staff satisfaction and low turnover. So those are already markers at Ts'ewulhtun. They've got an incredible, as I mentioned, an incredible staff many have been there for a long, long time, which I think is a testament to the work that's being done there and the leadership. And finally, I think this system and whatever models, I should say, are developed over the course of the next few years as the First Nations Health Authority transforms primary care for our communities, with our communities, is that the models need to be profitable and sustainable. So it doesn't serve anybody to develop a system that's not sustainable, and I think that's why outside of our First Nations communities, even the larger health system is really facing a crisis and realizes that this current system and the way that it's funded and the way that it's designed doesn't work. So we're working with a system that really was designed for acute care illness, for a time when infectious disease was the major the major risk to people's health and longevity, and that has shifted over the last 10 to 20 years, and now the major threat to people's life and longevity is chronic disease and mental health and mental illness issues. And so we need to think about totally redesigning a system to deal with those issues, not issues that were 50 years or 100 years in the past. So we have an opportunity, I think, to be innovative and inform the larger, broader system as well. So the teamlet model has been described in other areas, certainly in the States and with the NUCA model of care. And so our version of the teamlet model would include a small teamlet that would be a family physician, an RN case manager, and then 2 health coaches. And the health coaches would either be LPNs or medical office assistants. And the roles are laid out here. So the family physician would be the coordinator of a client's overall health care. They would build relationships with the client and their family. They would be that liaison point with other care providers outside of the center. And they would create with the client and their families diagnostic and treatment plans. And it's actually been shown repeatedly that when clients have an opportunity to be fully engaged in their healthcare and fully engaged in the decision-making process, they will actually choose less aggressive, less intensive diagnostics and treatments. But the key there is being fully engaged and fully informed. And as I mentioned earlier, the current model doesn't allow and doesn't compensate people to take the time to make that happen. So the RN case manager would actually have a primary role of focusing on preventative health measures and what we would consider sort of health and wellness panel management. So that would be kind of looking at that whole group of 800 to 1,200 people and saying, okay, how are we doing on issues around colon cancer screening and prevention? How are we doing in terms of rates of pap smears and cervical cancer detection? And then also, so I'm using kind of those medical model outcomes, but again, there would be an opportunity for discussion with the community and say, okay, what would be the important health and wellness maintenance tasks that this teamlet manager should be undertaking? And then the health coaches are such an interesting role. So these are typically community members who have this additional training either as LPN or MOA, and they're really the mainstays of the relationship between the client and the teamlet. They greet the client, they take the client to the room, they do their initial vital sign measurements, they review pre-visit questionnaires. They conduct the post-visit review with the client to ensure that the client understands what just happened, what the plan is, what the treatment is, what that's all about. And then they would also have the technical skills of doing things like throat swabs and EKGs and blood draws if necessary. So a typical teamlet visit might look like a client and family being greeted by the Aboriginal health coach, meeting with the health coach and establishing the goals for the visit, then having the health coach do an initial history and data gathering, like I mentioned, the vitals and things. Then having the family physician come in and, again, do the relationship development piece and review the concerns. And in that time, the family physician would work with the client and the family to get a better understanding of what the issues are that day, what the appropriate diagnostic tests that might be that they could recommend, what appropriate treatments they might recommend, and whether that fits with what the client's needs. And then I think this is probably the most key step, is that the family physician leaves and the health coach stays and reviews the plan, including the diagnostic tests, the treatment plans, and the follow-up. And this last step is really, I think, the marker of whether this model works or not, is that the client leaves with a sense of clarity, satisfaction, and empowerment about making informed choices about their health. I've had this very unique opportunity over the last year to sit with many people who are dissatisfied, as I mentioned, with their current primary care service, and try to understand from them what it is that has happened, what, why things didn't work out for them. And it's been really interesting to kind of try and piece together stories and be sitting in sort of a medical, non-medical place and try to understand and make sense of the story that's being shared with me. And I would say probably 9 times out of 10, when I finally feel like I've got all the pieces together and I kind of understand what might have happened at the ER department or at the family physician's office, I think, if everything were the same, like I probably, and this isn't to say that my family medicine skills are the best, but I often think, I probably would have suggested the same diagnostic tests, I probably would have suggested the same treatment plans, and I probably would have come up with the same diagnosis. But the piece that seems to be missing, and then often because I have the benefit of having the time to sit with people and work through and explain things and kind of check their understanding, and if there are areas of misinformation or misunderstanding, we work on clarifying that together. People seem, and we haven't evaluated this, but people seem to be more satisfied when they leave with the information that we've kind of created together. But it actually hasn't been much different than the information that they've gotten in the community from their local family physicians. So I think it's really that key piece of making sure that that somebody understands what it is that was just communicated. And we are really bad at that as family physicians sometimes, at getting caught up in the pace and the urgency and falling back on medical jargon and not having the time to make sure that people really understand what it is that we're suggesting. And so, again, being able to have the time and have that relationship building and communication clarity built into the model is, I think, going to be a really successful way to move forward. Other key team players, so those little teamlets would be kind of little hubs, but they again would be part of a larger team. And so there would be a primary care clinic manager, nurse practitioners, possibly, reception, dietitian. Another key role that we don't currently have at the center but has been noted to be sort of a gap in the services is a social determinants of health advocate. So that would probably be somebody with a social work degree or background, but really what we find is so much of people come in with such complex needs and complex problems, and there's a lot of times that the real issues are lack of or poverty, lack of housing, lack of safety, personal safety, and those are areas that we really, certainly as medical professionals and as nursing professionals, don't have a lot of training in terms of how to best support somebody to secure those basic needs. And so having somebody on our team would be amazing. I was just at the Elbow River Healing Lodge in Calgary, and they're a primary care clinic, and they have 2 social workers. They have a social worker who works for their clients who have housing, and as a social worker who does outreach with clients who don't have housing. And they said absolutely, if there's one role that you can get on your team to make your health services, just enhance your health services and make them more robust, it's you need to have somebody in that position. We'd also love to have an occupational therapist, physical therapist, we've got one Aboriginal liaison nurse for in-hospital clients, and she's totally run off her feet, so having another person on that team would be great. And the list goes on, right? Like there's so many different roles and people that could be working together to best serve the communities. And so, like I say, we're just at the really early phases, and so if there's a glaring omission on this list and you think, oh, why didn't they include that role or that person on the team, I really welcome you to share that with us in a few moments when I wrap up the presentation, because we'd love to hear about that, your ideas. So the primary care teamlet, we see them as being really integrated in a larger network of community health and wellness services, and that these different teams work seamlessly together to support the care of the community. So the current health center teams include a healthy families team, healthy lifestyles, maternal child health, dental health. Quinatsistal is the mental health team, and the Kautzin-Sohain Elders program. We would envision including a traditional medicine and spiritual wellness team that would be more formalized. So currently the health center does work with traditional peoples in certain instances where the client is directing that and guiding that process. But I think there's a lot of desire, certainly I've heard from different areas of the health center and the Cultural Safety Committee, to include more traditional medicine and spiritual wellness. Integrative practitioners, so again, people that work sort of in that area between traditional and Western medicine, and how does that all come together, and then primary care teamlets. So what would be offered at this wellness center that we're envisioning as being a sort of much larger space than we currently occupy? So a sacred healing room, a medicinal garden, exercise facility, community cooking facility, traditional cooking facility, an artist in residence in the waiting room, so having an area to perhaps have somebody doing weaving or knitting or carving, so that that might be a part of people's experience as they're waiting to access services. And then on the more biomedical side, we would love to include clinical space for visiting specialists. There are a number of specialists that currently come to the center, and every time we have somebody come, it's an exciting time because we know that that's an enhanced service, but there's a lot of shuffling and people moving around their offices, so it'd be nice to have dedicated space. Laboratory services, diagnostic imaging, and pharmacy. A very common complaint that I hear from clients is that they absolutely do not want to go to the hospital. That's a total last resort, and that is, of course, one of the only areas, or one of the few areas, to get labs and x-rays and CAT scans and that sort of thing. And unfortunately, although there's been a lot of work in the area to improve the safety of the service at the hospital, there's still a lot of work to be done, and there's a lot of really historically entrenched negative associations with the hospital. So I think the more services that can be offered right on Cowichan Tribe's territory, the better. Another issue is, of course, transportation, and not everybody has access to transportation. Public transportation is an issue, so if there's more of a one-stop shop, that would work better. Thanks, Erin. So educational excellence. Ts'ewulhtun Health Center, as I mentioned earlier, is a highly sought clinical training experience for healthcare professionals, so there's constantly requests to come and work with the staff. We would like to see expanded and enhanced opportunities for education by formalizing relationships with post-secondary institutions, center-specific training programs, so similar to the NUCA model in Alaska, they train all their own health coaches, and dedicated teaching space and resources. So again, just thinking forward and trying to ensure that all of the plans that we're making now do their best to kind of fit what the needs are going to be in the future. The teamlet primary care aligns with the 7 directives, certainly of the First Nations Health Authority. It's community-driven, nation-based. It increases First Nations client and family decision-making in their primary care. It improves primary care services, fosters meaningful collaboration and partnership within the teamlet, between the teamlet and the other Ts'ewulhtun Health Center teams, and then in the broader level outside with the other the external medical community in the local Cowichan area. Develops local human and economic capacity. I'm always excited when I have little ones come in and I get to ask them what they want to do when they grow up, and they kind of get that bit of a blank stare and wait, and have you ever thought about being a doctor, and kind of shaking their head, and then by the end thinking, do you think you might want to be a doctor? Yeah, it's exciting, just that idea. I think when people see another Aboriginal person doing something, it makes that possible, right? That can be included in your dreams and your visions. It's without prejudice to First Nations interests because it's all kind of driven by the community and functions at a high operational standard. That, again, is kind of what guides what we're doing. So the short-term vision versus the long-term, we'd like to, in the very short term, increase physician time to a minimum of 1.2 full-time equivalents and increase administrative support. And we've just had discussions actually that the current model with sort of the half-time physician time isn't working very well for those circumstances that I was mentioning earlier with really complex clients or the chronic pain clients, because as nice as it would be if clients were always able to attend their scheduled appointments on the days that we're in clinic, as you know, in our communities there's a lot of things that happen, and people have to attend funerals and community meetings, and things come up and people can't come to their appointments, and then it's really challenging if we don't have any coverage. So if this isn't possible in the short term, we're probably going to have to narrow our scope of practice and scope of service to make sure that we are providing safe and effective care and treatment. But we would hope that in the short term we're able to increase so that we can have that dedicated practice panel. And then in the longer term, what we're envisioning is fully embracing the wellness model and expanding space by leaps and bounds. So, Aitsepka, Masicho, I really appreciate being able to share a little bit of our experience over the last year or so with you. And I just got the 10-minute warning sign, I guess, a couple minutes ago. So if there is anybody that has thoughts or ideas or perhaps gaps that you've noticed in what it is, our process that we've been taking. This is really, when I went forward to Jennifer and Judith and said, could we present at Gathering Wisdom? For me, it was really about having an opportunity to learn from everybody else that's doing this work and hear about the exciting work that's happening in other places, because we don't want to do this alone, and we know that there's so much knowledge and wisdom out there. So, yeah, I'm all ears. Masi. Not all at once.
It's always a karaoke mic. You had a slide up there that was key team players, and you alluded that there's obviously more to it, but one thing I might mention is that there was a lack of elders, or a lack of bringing in that knowledge from the community, from the older, with the culture and the elders is bringing. That's the only gap I saw. So, yeah.
Thank you. That's an excellent point. And I'm sorry that there was that oversight, because I think certainly we've been guided every step of the process. I've certainly been guided by Judith and Jennifer, who have been guided by the elders that they work with. And I think our intention was that would be part of that traditional medicine and spiritual wellness team, but I think you're right, that needs to be more explicit about how that team really guides and supports the primary care teamlets, and vice versa. How would the teamlets support those elders? So thank you, that's a totally helpful observation. Thanks. So the question is around what kind of training the health coaches receive. So we don't actually have any on-the-ground health coaches right now, but in the other places that have teamlets, health coaches are usually either a licensed practical nurse or a medical office assistant who would have the medical office assistant training with some additional sort of health coach training. Yeah.
Question I have is just around the physician time. Where I live, you know, we live in a really remote community. I'm basically here to learn from you. I'm from an area, a place called Clem-Too, and up there, you know, we face. Our doctor comes in bi-weekly, comes in every 2 weeks. He comes up on a private little speedboat from Bella Bella and comes to Clem-Too, weather permitting, to see clients. But, you know, we have more clients than there is doctor time. The system that's in place right now isn't very effective. And you talked about fragmented care, and that's another thing we're facing as well. We have worked in the past where we've trained our own home and community care workers, but we haven't branched out into the LPN component, because if we did branch out into the LPN component, then maybe the nurses can be on site while the head nurse, the RN, is off duty for a bit, you know, in face of burnout. But like my question after all that is how do you deal with that system? I guess you have more doctor time than we would have doctor time up in Clem-Too. It's different settings.
Oh, I wish I had a good answer for your very good question. I think I really don't know. We've been working really hard and having conversations at different tables, trying to figure out where is that leverage point? How do you shift the model, and how do you shift the understanding that the current model doesn't meet our needs without it becoming really physician-centered? So I try to be, in the language I'm using today, I hope that it came across that I really want to emphasize the primary care teamlet and not just physician time, because I think that isn't always kind of the answer. But what I would suggest in terms of a situation where it's a more remote community is looking to maybe some of the work that Dr. Polovich is doing, John Polovich and Dr. Baselt, who are working with Takla Landing and Yakuchi and Fort Babine and Tatchit, I believe, and then Dr. Baselt working with Tseke and I can't remember the other community, but they're using the telemedicine. And so now I'm speaking a little bit from my role as the site director for the residency program. So we have 2 of our family medicine residents that work with Dr. Polovich and fly into those communities a week, a month. And then he provides care to those communities through telemedicine the other 3 weeks of the month. So they've found a way to ensure that there's continuity of care without actually needing to have a doctor on site all that time. That said, I believe the funding arrangements for his physician time is something that the communities, and I can't speak totally positively, but that's my understanding, is that the communities have arranged that. So I think what I've understood from the landscape right now is that it's extremely variable in terms of who has physician time, how it's funded, what it looks like, and there isn't kind of a province-wide approach. So I'm hopeful that as the FNHA gets into the transformative part of their work, that becomes, and I heard Richard Jock say that primary care is a priority, that they'll find a way to make that equitable, right? So that we're kind of, yeah. That was a long answer.
Sorry. The other thing I was going to ask, I don't recall, I was just trying to take notes and listen at the same time, but one of the things too I wanted to ask is how do you teach your clients, self-advocacy as well? Because what happens where I live as well is a lot of my folks get so attached to the RN, the home and community care RN, and we have to, let the person go off duty for a bit so that they don't face burnout. But at the same time, you have our people waiting until their wonderful nurse gets back, and then they go see her or want her to go visit them, and then they're more sick. So it's really difficult. Like it's easier said than done, and I think I learned from wise people here that would kind of give us guidance on how to promote self-advocacy, because a lot of times too, med reviews are lacking. Med reviews are lacking. People are taking medications they shouldn't be taking, no longer be taking, it just goes on. And then, you know, I really feel that, you know, that's where we need to kind of step in as health leads a little, just to kind of help our people understand how they self-advocate. Well, one of the things is like, oh, the clinic never called me. Well, you know, you could call a clinic, but in a way that's non-abrasive, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I thank you for that comment, because again, it's nice to know that we're not alone, because it's such a fine balance of, you know, how do you support somebody but not enable them, right? And how do you make sure that you're being really respectful of them, and that you're not interfering, and that you're not overstepping your bounds and robbing them of an opportunity to really take charge and direct their care. And I think I've noticed that quite a bit, probably even more so with the elders that I've seen, is that there's a real kind of sense like of just sitting back and like, well, just tell me what to do, because you're the doctor and you should tell me. And so I think you're absolutely right. There's like this huge shift that needs to happen on the system side, but there also has to be a shift on the client side of like being oriented, okay, how do I use this new system? Because it's new, right? It's not the same model. So how do we do that? So I don't know, I hope maybe a few years from now we'll have more ideas to share about how to do that, because I don't think that's an area that I feel super confident in myself. Yeah, thank you. I don't know, Judith or Jennifer, do you have anything to add? I'm sorry, I didn't actually think to turn it over to you guys before my fearless leaders. No? Okay.
Thanks so much. Give her a hand.
Which is the designated time that we would start, and I just want to make sure we note that as it goes by. See ya. As you see, we're still doing a few little arrangements for this afternoon's program, and if anyone finds Evan Adams, please send him to the head table. I have to do Evan's introduction later, and I think it's going to be, if there's anyone in the room who doesn't know Evan, raise your hand, I'll come by and introduce you. So we'll start in about 5 or 10 minutes. I think the best we could do, though, is let's sing Happy Birthday to Geordie Johnson. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Geordie. Happy birthday to you. He said, what, no gifts? I came all the way in here for no gifts? Thank you very much, Geordie. Couple of quick things. Evaluations, of course, I know you're all excited about that, so if you would please make sure you fill those out and go. And if you're at the evaluation table on the second floor, you can do it in writing, or you can actually just tell one of the staff that are there and they will record it for you. I did want to note that something of significant value was turned into the registration table, so if you are missing something of significant value and you will know what that is, please go to the registration table and they will help you out with that. You also have an invitation to the 9th Annual Aboriginal National Veterans Day ceremonies and parade on November 8th at the Carnegie Center, 401 Main Street, Hastings in Maine. Starts at 9 a.m. and the parade is at 10:15, and we'll do the Hastings to Cambie. And there will be, of course, wreath presentations for the veterans, and the Aboriginal Friendship Center is hosting a lunch, so please come on out. And you can sign up for wreath presentations on the Facebook page for the events for that day. And that's under the guidance of Kelly White. Am I getting the rush? Suddenly I was Harpo Marx. It was Harpo, right? All right. I've had the chance to say a number of times, I get to introduce some great people in my work, and of course there's always a time when you have somebody who needs no introduction. I did ask if anybody in the room did not know Dr. Evan Adams to raise their hand, and 2 people over there did, so we'll go by later. I do want to tell this one story. Evan, well known in our communities for so many years, and particularly for his acting career early on, and then of course committing to a health career and becoming a doctor, and is currently now the Deputy Medical Health Officer for the province of British Columbia. A position and a systemic change which is included in the framework agreement under which we all gather. And so as a part of the foresight, some of those strategic and systemic changes were forecasted, in fact. So, just shows the vision of that document. Shortly after, he was still, I think, an intern at St. Paul's on Burrard Street. And I ran into him in the elevator, and he gave me his card, and it said, Evan Adams, actor. And underneath that it said, family physician. And all we thought was, maybe 2 cards. Please help me welcome Dr. Evan Adams.